Hello everyone, welcome to Flying Pig Music. Today I'm going to be talking about the Beatles Get Back documentary series on Disney+. I just finished watching it this weekend, and I gotta say, man, I love this thing. I am a huge Beatles fan. They are my number one favorite band, and they always have been, and they probably always will be. I watched the thing one part each day with my daughter, and I gotta say, this was some of the most fun I have had watching a series. My favorite musical documentary so far out of any that I've seen. So what I'm going to be doing right now is just giving you my first impressions of what I thought, what stood out to me during this series. And if you haven't watched it, please go and watch it first before listening to this. Not that there's necessarily spoilers, but it's just so much more fun to see it firsthand instead of hearing about it and then watching it. So this isn't a countdown of moments by any means. This is just randomly what comes to my mind, what stood out while I was watching this. So first, Let It Be holds a very special place in my heart. It is the very first album, CD, that I ever purchased with my own money when I was a kid. My dad had some LPs by the Beatles. I was given help as a gift by a family member. But as far as me, my own money, I worked to earn some money, and my very first musical purchase ever was Let It Be. There's something about that front cover, that image of the four of them. I just couldn't get it out of my head, and I had to buy it. And it was pretty interesting. I was very familiar with some of the songs there because I knew the Beatles hits. I had listened to the Blue album, so I was familiar with the famous songs on there. And the rest of them I wasn't too familiar with. And it struck me as kind of an album of songs that don't really belong together, all in one album. And I could never really put my finger on why until I got a little bit older and I started reading into the Get Back sessions, and especially when this was going to come out, I learned that it was from a few different sessions or different sources. So they had the Get Back sessions where they tried to do everything kind of old school, no overdubs, all in one take. And that was, one section, one group of songs. And then the other group of songs are the songs that Phil Spector kind of threw his wall of sound production all over. That was the other group of songs. And then you had I Me Mine, which was kind of recorded a year later by the three remaining Beatles after John Lennon quit. And then you had Across the Universe, which was recorded before the Get Back sessions. So you had all these different groups of songs that kind of just were hodgepodgely thrown together to be on an LP. And then the little note on the back cover that said, this is a new phase Beatles album, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean. So I loved the album. I do not think it is their best work, but, they never went out to create their best work. They were jamming, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So let's get into it. The first thing that I really loved was that, damn it, man, it was only 22 days of recording together. I never really thought of that before. I always kind of knew that it was a short amount of time. They got together in early 1969. I knew that they did the rooftop concert on the 30th of January. But man, the amount of pressure that they put on themselves, 22 days to come up with a new album worth of songs, record that album, and do a concert in front of a live television audience, in front of a live audience that was going to be broadcast on television in less than a month. It's almost an impossible task. Like, what were they thinking? This was an incredibly ambitious project that they set out to do, and I never really thought of that before. 22 days. They started on the 2nd of January, and they finished on the 30th or the 31st of January, a day after the rooftop concert they did the last bit of filming. And I never really thought of that before. And it kind of hit me, and it kind of put it into a whole new perspective of how I should judge the Let It Be album. This was only 22 days worth, coming in with a blank slate, coming up, writing with new songs, recording them and releasing them and performing them live. And to think, who else could do that? If any band that you pick could do that nowadays, would they be able to? And if they did, what would be the quality of their songs? Would it be as memorable as the songs on Let It Be? I highly doubt it. Highly, highly doubt it. So that's one thing. I love the fact that Peter Jackson did it one day at a time, just chronologically. Let the story tell itself. What happened on this day and the next day and the next day, and you can just sort of see the story, the narrative unfold all on its own without any need for manipulating events any which way that a director sees fit. It's all just timeline straight. And I love that about it. The next thing that stood out to me was the conversations. The music is great. Of course it's going to be. But the conversations are so enthralling. And even if you've heard all the Nagra mono tapes, most of the audio on those tapes is awful. And somehow Peter Jackson and his team came up with such amazingly good processes of making this audio so much more enjoyable to listen to. There's amazing conversations and video of George getting up and quitting the band, very nonchalantly saying, "I think I'll be leaving now." When? Right now, I'm leaving the band. You can put out an ad on the New Musical Express, put an ad on the NME for a new guitarist. I'm out of here. And the aftermath of that, after George leaves, how the remaining three Beatles kind of kept jamming, but it's very apparent that it's not working out. And the next day, Ringo's the first to come into work, kind of awkwardly, because no one else is there. Then Paul shows up, and then it's apparent John's not going to show up. And there's this conversation with, Paul and Ringo and the crew, Michael Lindsay Hogg, the director, and Glenn Johns. And Ringo doesn't say much, but Paul, you can just see this wave of emotions coming up behind him. He's fighting to hold the tears back. This is his band, not necessarily his band, but this is his life. He loves the Beatles. He loves being in the Beatles. And here we see him really thinking, this is the end. There is no more Beatles. And we can sort of then hear John and Paul have a conversation with hidden microphone audio of they're talking to each other about how they're admitting guilt of what they've done to George and kind of put him in a corner, and how, it's not working out this way. They need to give George better attention to his music, to his ideas. John is kind of confronting Paul about how he's kind of bossy, and Paul's kind of defending him, saying, I kind of have to be, ever since Brian Epstein died, we've been without direction, without somebody telling us to work, and I'm kind of trying to do that. And it's just so powerful hearing them talk this way. And another conversation is with George talking to John about how if they could go solo and have this outlet of solo albums to be able to release their music, it could keep the Beatles thing going as well. And you can kind of see that. George has this amazingly large backlog of songs, and he just wants to get it all out. And he's telling John that if he could get those songs out, if he could get an album out of songs, that'll give him, the energy to keep going with the Beatles. So you see these guys, they don't really want to break up at this time. They want to keep the Beatles going, and they're trying to find ways to do it. And that was just such a great moment. These conversations on here are so amazing. Another thing that stood out to me was Yoko Ono. Yes, Yoko Ono stood out to me. Why? Because, yes, she is a constant presence there. Whenever you see John, you see Yoko. But she isn't doing anything, and no one there seems bothered by her. You know, the story, the narrative that was kind of thrown out there, the urban legend was that, you know, Yoko broke up the Beatles, which I don't agree with, but, you know, that's the common misconception. But, you know, that's kind of the story, that Yoko was this, you know, this person, and her presence just completely, you know, got under the Beatles' skin, and it caused bad vibes and caused the breakup of the Beatles. You know, you see Yoko there. She's a constant presence in the film, but she keeps to herself. She's not butting in the conversations. She lets John speak for himself. You do hear her wail with some jams, and it's actually pretty funny and pretty cool. You see Heather McCartney. She has a really funny reaction to Yoko wailing away, but it's not a presence that's in your face that gets under your skin. Yoko Ono is John's lover. She's there, and she keeps to herself. She keeps her mouth shut. She's very respectful when they're jamming. She doesn't make a sound. And that just completely surprised me. I was not bothered one bit by Yoko Ono's presence. I mean, Linda McCartney, well, she's not McCartney yet, Linda Eastman, but Linda, when she comes out on camera, you know, she's doing something. You know, she's either taking a picture, she's a photographer, she's taking pictures, or she's, you know, partaking in the conversation. She's putting in her 2 cents, and that's fine. But she's more of a, you know, noticeable presence whenever she's around. Yoko is around the whole entire film, and man, she is just completely silent. She's just sitting there doing her own thing. She just wants to be around John. John just wants her to be around. And another conversation is when Paul is kind of talking about that, saying, you know, they have no right telling John, you know, pick us or Yoko, because he's going to pick Yoko and he has every right to be. And, you know, it's just really great. And whoever thinks that Yoko broke up the Beatles is very, very misguided with that thinking. There was so many other factors that led to it. Another thing I loved was hearing them work on songs that didn't end up on the Let It Be album, songs that ended up on Abbey Road, such as Something. You know, She Came In Through the Bathroom Window, Oh Darling. Those were all fantastic, seeing those in their very early embryonic state. All Things Must Pass, beautiful thing. You can tell Paul and John loved that song. And for one reason or another, George maybe was thinking, you know, this is too good of a song. I'm going to save it for my own solo album. But, you know, Paul and John, both, in their notes, you can see that they wanted that song on the ending product, on the album. And it would have been so great to hear a very well done Beatles version of that song with their, you know, with their melodies, with their harmonies. You know, not saying that the All Things Must Pass solo version wasn't good at all. It's fantastic. But man, to hear, to be able to hear a finished take of that song. I mean, on the Let It Be box set, you can hear a rehearsal take, and that already sounds great. So imagine if they could have rehearsed and polished it up. It would have been so great. Watching George guide Ringo through Octopus's Garden, watching Paul do an early version of Another Day, hearing them play John's Gimme Some Truth. Oh, just so great. So great. And another thing that stood out to me was how amazing they sounded live, how happy they looked. All of that rehearsing in the studio when they finally got up on the roof man, they just sounded so good. They sounded so good. In fact, if they would have done it the another way with fans and people screaming in the crowd, it would have taken away from how good the musical performances were up on that roof. It was so freezing cold and windy, and they could have sounded awful. You know, their fingers were hurting them. You can hear John say that it hurts his fingers to play the chords. He can't do it. But man, they just sounded so great. And speaking of sounding great, I always knew Billy Preston contributed to the Let It Be Get Back sessions, but you can really see by watching this. You know, they've been a couple weeks trying to get these songs to fall into place and can't really get it down. They can't really nail down the sound for these songs. Billy Preston comes in just to say hi, because they go way back, and they ask him to sit down and play. As soon as he sits down at that piano and starts playing, like everything just clicks. And that was amazing to see and to hear. You can see their eyes light up. You can hear the sound of the songs. Like he was the missing ingredient. Like he was the missing link, the key to making all of this work. And as soon as he shows up and starts jamming, these songs just immediately start falling into place. Don't Let Me Down, Dig a Pony, Get Back, One After 909, I've Got a Feeling. The addition of Billy Preston on electric piano just kicks these songs into overdrive, and it makes them happy. To see, you know, their old friend come in and play with them. It's just unbelievable. I never knew, you know, the before and after, before Billy and after Billy, how amazing and what he adds to this. It was just unbelievable. I say that he gets my vote for MVP of the Get Back sessions. Really, in my opinion, without Billy Preston, the thing wouldn't have worked. So those are my thoughts. I don't really have much to say. That was my thoughts on the Get Back series that Peter Jackson has released on Disney Plus. If you have any comments on my take, or if you want to let me know what you loved in the comment section, go right ahead, man. I would love to converse, talk about this. I'm so into it right now. I've been listening to the 2021 box set release. I've been listening to the Let It Be Naked album, which, if you haven't heard it, sounds amazing. And I've been listening to the original Let It Be album, the Anthology 3 second disc with all their Let It Be sessions on there. Yeah, I've been immersing myself in this because right now it's just all I can think about. If I could, I would watch it all over again. You know, 6, 7, 8 hours is not enough. I wish I could watch more. And, you know, this just makes me into an even bigger Beatles fan than I already was. So if you enjoyed this, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe. All right, everyone. Thanks a lot. And I hope you come back for another conversation on the Beatles or Pink Floyd or whatever. We'll see what we do. All right. Take care.